Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I could hear you.
Great. Give me a second to find some headphones.
Okay.
See. All right. How was your Thanksgiving?
Good, and yourself?
Not bad. Tried to go snowboarding, but there was no snow to be had.
What part? Where do you live by?
California. So went up to Tahoe Lake.
Hmm.
Um,
Wait, Lake Tahoe or Tahoe Lake? Is that different?
Lake Tahoe, yeah.
Lake Tahoe. Hmm.
But yeah, it looks like it's starting to snow this week, so I just tried a week early, but that's okay. Yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you arrive here? What are you looking forward to? What are you trying to get out of this interview?
Okay. I'm a student right now at Oxnard College, and I'm transferring next fall. Um, I made it. I'm a Code 2040 finalist, so I guess my next step is to interview with companies and try to land an internship to be a full Code 2040 fellow. What I hope to get out of this is just to, I guess, improve my interviewing skills. I've only had a few interviews, so I'm trying to like improve the way I interview and my knowledge on the how to properly like answer these questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as, and then as far as what language I use for these interviews, I'm pretty. I think my strongest language is C++, but I took my first Java class this semester, and I'm starting to use that more for interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's where I'm at right now.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely recommend just using whatever you're most comfortable with. Um, People don't tend to care about what language you use as long as you solve whatever problems you're working on.
Hmm.
All right. So yeah, a little bit about myself. I've been in the Bay Area for 6 years, six almost seven. I'm currently working at Square, mostly as a backend engineer, and I've been at Square for 3.5 years. And I mentored with Code 2040 2 years ago, and then I've just been in and out trying to help wherever I can.
Mm. What
All right. Go
Where did
ahead.
you go to school?
Say that again.
Did he go to school in the Bay Area?
No, I went to school in the Dominican Republic.
Mm.
So I moved out here after graduating.
And then you did the Code 2040. You're a Code 2040 fellow. You said
No, I've been a mentor
a mentor.
for other fellows. Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, let's get started. Let me just come over here and paste a question.
Okay.
So yeah, sleep sort, a horrible algorithm. Read through it. Let me know if I can clear anything up.
Mm. It's sort of horrible, horrible. Given someone who wants to sort, please create a new thread for each integer. Inside the thread, sleep for the integer's value. Add the integer to resulting collection. Done something collection retain in sorted order. Can you explain how they end up in sorted? Let's implement. You're free to look up questions on Google Stack of I didn't just don't work. They use all the tools available. Get a first iteration running and improve. Okay. So the integers are they all positive integers?
Yeah, let's start with that assumption.
Okay, all positive integers. What do you mean by create a new thread for each integer?
So are you familiar with threads?
No. No.
What were you gonna say?
Cause when I picture a thread, I picture like a thread in a forum. I don't know. What are you referring to?
Mm. No. So in programming languages, threads are just a way of being able to do concurrent programming, or parallel programming.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same program, you can have three threads running code, and they're running it at the same time.
Mm.
So
Okay.
imagine a thread that's just a piece of code that's running independently and concurrently of other pieces of code.
Mm. Okay. That I think that's because the way I thought programming is that like it runs each line of code at once, but a thread is doing multiple things at once.
Yeah, or you can. It's a way of being able to do multiple things at once. Yeah.
Okay. Sleep value. And when you say sleep for the integer's value, that means it would pause for the integer's value
Correct. Yes.
and pause seconds or milliseconds or seconds.
Does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's my question. Does it matter the time unit that we use?
Hmm. I would think it would.
How would it matter?
Wouldn't it affect the other programs or how it's
Well, but if all the threads are using the same time units, then
it wouldn't matter?
whether we scale it up or down, all of them would be sleeping the same amount, right? Or in the same reference to each other.
Hmm.
So given that you have all these threads running and each one is sleeping for the amount, do you can you see how this algorithm can take an unsorted list and turn it into a sorted list?
Yeah.
So can you walk me through an example?
Okay. So you're saying for an example of that unsorted list to make it into a sorted list?
Yeah.
Um, wouldn't you just use like a sorting algorithm to sort one of them?
Oh yeah. Well, you could do that, but using these three steps, you should be able to get a sorted algorithm just with these three.
Hmm. Given it that especially for into the value, add into the results collection. Okay. And then
So for example, let's say that we take our first three numbers, 3, 5, and 1, or 3, 1, and 5.
mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have three threads, and so let's just sort of pseudocode this out here. And so according to our algorithm, one of them is gonna sleep 5, one of them is gonna sleep 1, and then this one's gonna sleep 3.
Mm-hmm.
So out of these threads, which one would finish first?
The second thread.
Right, and so we say, sorry, the algorithm says that once it sleeps for the integer's value, then we add the integer to resulting collection. And so let's say that we have a result here, and we're gonna add that value.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you said, the first thread that's gonna finish is 1, so result's gonna have a 1 at that point. What's the second thread that would finish?
That'll be the first one.
Right, and then after that, the third one would finish.
The third one.
And so that's how a port, like after the first push it would be this, then it would be this, and finally you have all three. So
Mm-hmm.
do you get now how the algorithm works?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all there is to it, to the algorithm. So let's try to implement it in whichever language you prefer. Since you're not familiar with threads, I would suggest using Java just because the documentation for that will be easier to understand.
Okay. And then from my understanding is that you said to use all tools available for you for this.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm fully expecting you to look up documentation for this, Google for examples, etc.
Mhm. Okay. So. Mhm. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. So Thread is thread like in Java is thread a class or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Mhm.
Java. I guess my first step would be just to look up the thread class for Java, the docs.
Mhm.
Um, there's a priority, there's a hardware. Um, okay. I guess what I want to do first is write down the definition of a thread. Um, that's a thread. Let's see. Currently follow the thread. Um, so online it says every thread has a priority. Threads with higher priority are executed in preference to threads with lower priority. Um,
Yeah, I think in this case we don't have to consider priority. So that's important if we want certain threads to have more runtime, but since in this case all threads should have the same priority, we don't have to consider different priorities.
okay. So don't have to consider that. Um, all right. So the integers are going to be in an array, correct?
What would be a good API for this function?
I mean,
Or sorry, let's just assume that it's an array.
array. Okay. What do you mean by what would be a good API? Like, you're saying we should
Uh,
use.
oh, I meant if we were making let's say that we were making a class or sorry a method called sleep sort.
Uh-huh.
So what would be a good signature for it? What would you expect to receive his input, and what would be your output?
Um, an array. Wait. What would we want our to what would we want it to return?
Yeah, and what would we want to take in as well?
Or
Like what would make sense?
wouldn't we want to pass in the integers in there and
Yeah, and
return
so
it?
there are several ways of passing in a set of integers, right?
Yeah.
And so you can pick whichever makes most sense to you.
Okay. So maybe I would probably go with an array list, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, it's already there. Array list, and we want integers, right? And then I guess I'll do I'm just gonna add some numbers to it,
Sounds good.
and then just so I could write some tests. And then I'm gonna create the sleep sort algorithm. I mean, function or method.
Mm-hmm.
And then here I could pass in nums. You wanted to return um, you wanted to return the integers in sorted order, right? So
Yep,
does it matter the way you want it to be returned?
What do you mean?
So like comma separated, or just like space separated, or just like
Let's just like you said that we're taking an array list here. So we're taking, or let's just say a list of integers here. I think we can just return the same here.
Okay.
And then you can format it however you'd like after the fact.
Mm-hmm. So this would be a multi-threading problem, correct?
Yes, correct.
So it says I could create a thread by extending the thread class. Okay. So sleep sort. Try. So on line, my so I'm going through the thread docs right now.
Mhm.
So I guess there's three ways, or there's various ways to create a thread.
Mhm.
I think I'll go with extending it.
Okay.
And okay. So okay. The value input. I'm gonna loop through the list.
Mhm.
Runnable. Run method. Implements runnable. Okay, now I need to figure out what runnable does. So here they so here they create separate class. Is it fine if I create a separate class, or does it have to be a method?
No, you can create a separate class, absolutely.
I'm looking at some code on GitHub. I'm gonna try to use that to try to figure out how to work this out. Looks like they're using some classes that I need to look up and figure out how they work.
So you had mentioned inheriting from thread. Was that the approach you mentioned?
Yeah, but now I'm looking at some other code that I found online where people do it. They use two different classes.
How do the two different classes interact?
Um, so um, so the other class kind of just calls the sleep sort class.
Hmm.
So the other one's a sleep sort test runner, and that one just calls the sleep sort class, and then calls like a sort method and passes in the integers in there.
Oh,
And
okay.
then
I would still recommend. I think I would recommend going to the inheriting from thread class. I think that might be an easier implementation.
easier. Okay. So then I'll just extend.
Or not the solution actually. I thought that so you could extend like down here.
Extend or extend?
Or
Implement?
yeah. I think or it might be extensive because I think thread is an actual class, not an interface. Yeah, so the example that I'm seeing from the Oracle docs
Mm-hmm.
has something like this. Uh, So that's the class that's going to be running the thread. Um, to actually run the thread, you would do what's underneath there.
Okay. So then let's change this back. Then I have a okay. Thread. In the docs, they use extends. Should I use extends here?
Yeah.
And I'll put this. Loop through the values.
Okay, so what's your approach here?
I'm still going through some docs trying to figure this out. I see some people using hash maps. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm kind of lost right now.
Yeah, so let's see. So in this prime threads example, it looks like they have a constructor and then they have this run method. And inside of the run method is where all the logic happens. So if we were re-implementing that here, let's see. So we'll need a constructor for our sleep sort class. Let's have an empty constructor for now. And then we want to implement public void run. And so here, according to the algorithm, here is where we sleep for an amount and then push integer into a result. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how can we implement line 32 and 33 here?
So for it to sleep for an amount, let's see, Java. We would do. Can't you call this sleep method?
Yeah.
Which causes the thread to sleep for a specific number of milliseconds. Okay. Three. All right. Okay. So we want it to sleep for a certain amount of time. So I guess here we would we would pass in the array of integers, right? And then we would pass it into the sleep method.
Yeah, that sounds good. Except that, so if we change this the signature, then we're not overriding threads run method anymore, which we need to do in order to, because if you look at line 56, so this p dot start, this runs p dot run in a separate thread, which means that that run needs to can't take any arguments. So what's another way that we could pass in the number, or the number that we want to sleep for?
Can we make an object, and
What do you mean by creating an object? So to have a better idea, so here we added all the numbers on line 13. So then here we can say for integer n in nums. So for each one of these, we want to create a thread. And so according to this example, we would do new sleep sort. And we would do thread dot start.
thread dot.
Yeah, and so then this would run, or this would execute the run method. Separate thread.
Cause the thread to begin executing. Okay.
Yeah, so the question is still, how do we make it so that all the numbers here give sleep the sleep sort instance access to num.
Can we call thread dot run and then pass in the num?
If we do that, it will just run it in the same thread. Like it won't do anything different from calling a method. So it would be synchronous if we did that. And so what's a way that we can make data accessible in this run method?
Making the array list global.
That's one way, yeah. What else? When you're creating an instance, what's a way that you can pass data to the instance?
The constructor. Right.
Yeah, so could we pass?
So yeah, when we make a new constructor, pass in. So we pass it in here, and then the list. Make a new list of integers here.
And does it have to be a list? It sounds like we're creating a new thread for every number, and we're already doing that in line 15.
So make a new thread.
We're already creating a new thread in line 15. And so here, all we need is to set up the data to run the sleep and salt portions of the algorithm. So in order to do those two steps in the algorithm, what data do we need, or what data structures do we need?
Don't we just need the array?
Well, but we're not. So inside of here, in the sleep sort thread, it's a single thread, and we need many threads to run concurrently for the algorithm to work. So passing in the entire array here isn't necessary. We just need to know how long a single thread is going to sleep for. So for example, if in line 15 we pass in just num, then here let's say that we have integer, so that's how long we're going to sleep for. Then down in line 39, then we could sleep for that amount. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now this would run in a separate thread. So at this point, if we just want to just to see that, I think this is thread.sleep. That's close enough. So let's see. Oh, we have an extra very bottom. It's saying that there's no method adds for. Oh, because we're trying to add a string, I think, and it's expecting an integer. And then I think this, that. I'm saying can't find sleep sort because it doesn't exist that way. Oh, and then thread.sleep throws an exception, so let's just catch it and do nothing. So it's kind of hard to understand, but so let's sleep for a little bit longer so that it's easier. So in this case, we're going to be sleeping for sleep amount seconds. In line 36, are you with me?
Yeah.
And so when we run this, we should see that the threads print out in line 37. This should print after sleep amount seconds have passed. And since they're all running concurrently, then they're all going to start at the same time. So the first one should print after 1 second, and then after 3 seconds, the next one, and after 5. And so 1 second passes, 3 seconds pass, 5 seconds pass. And so if they weren't running concurrently, then it would take 3 seconds after the first one finishes and 5 seconds after the second one finishes. But instead it takes however long from the beginning of the program.
So when you make a thread, um, 'cause you said the thread starts here, right?
Uh huh.
And then these are individual threads.
Yeah, so we're creating a thread for every single number in nums.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so in line 27, when we're creating this constructor, this is a single thread.
So there are four threads in while the program is running.
Uh, three
Or
threads that we create plus a main thread. Yeah. So out of the threads we create, that would be three total.
Mhm. And then
Yeah, so we are still missing one part, which is adding so right now we're just printing the numbers, but what we really want to do is add them to um, some sort of collection result that we can then print out.
okay. And we would so this part here, the push integer to a result.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so would it be fine just to put it like in an array list?
Yeah, I think that would work.
Okay. So here, when you call thread, um, is this creating a new thread? No, right?
No, in this case, this is sleeping in the current thread. So this puts the current thread to sleep.
Okay. We could just add each sleep amount, right?
Well, not each one, right? So I mean, and this is a single thread, so we only have one sleep amount.
Uh, uh, for
And so if we run this like it is now, then every thread would have its own numB array list, but we want all of them to be adding sleep amount to the same list.
well, here you're looping through it. Okay.
So what are you thinking?
Uh, okay. I'll just look through the docs really quick, but So you're saying this would create a new array list for each one?
Yes, because inside of the run method, you're in the context of one of the threads you created.
You want to hold it somewhere, right? So we just can't print everything out.
Right, and so I think the idea of having an integer array here is correct, but since we want all of them to have the same access to the same one, we can just pass it in the constructor. So let's call this result. And we can say this result is equal result. And all the threads can have access to the same reference. Then we can cut that out, just put result.add. And then outside of here, we need to create this result list. Just pass it in, result. And so then if in line 50, if we do just print out result as we're adding stuff in, so we should see the result build up. And we can comment out the other things just to see the arrays. So yeah, does that make sense?
So you put it in the constructor. Wait, why did you put it in the constructor again?
The constructor is the way that we have to pass in data into a thread.
And then this way it doesn't create various lists.
Right, because otherwise, if you're creating a new one in every thread, then that new one that you create, is only going to have one element in it. When the result that you want to do is a list with all of the integers that we passed in sorted order. So in order to do that, every thread needs to have access to the same result that you're going to pass back.
Okay. Okay, so I guess let me just try to run through the problem just to make sure I understand it correctly.
Yeah.
So here it's just creating an array list and adding some numbers into the list. And then here, this is another array list for results to hold the sleep amount count.
It's going to hold the same integers in sorted order.
So this will hold holds the same integers order.
Yep.
And then here you loop through the nums array list, and then here you're creating an object of sleep sort, and then you pass in each element.
Perhaps a better name for this would be sleep sort thread.
Okay.
Yeah, we're passing in 3, then 1, then 5, and the result list.
And then
we call start.
This executes it. This executes the thread.
Yeah. So that yeah, exactly. It starts the thread and whatever it had before. Yeah, so that's what, if you didn't call start, then you would have the thread, but the run method would never actually get called.
Why would it never get called?
Well, if we don't have this, you created the thread, but you haven't done anything else with it. same as if like you create a list or any other object. Like you just created it, you allocated it in memory, but it's not running any code.
Why
So
wouldn't
you
you
call.
call thread.run?
So if you call thread.run, it's going to run sequentially. And so let's see. So when we call start, they all oh, where did I forget to change the name? 31. Yes, thread. Okay. So with start, the entire thing should take 5 seconds because they all started at the same time and they're running concurrently, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you call run, then this is not doing anything different than just a normal Java method. So normally when you call a method, it executes and then nothing else runs while it's executing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's slowly sequential. And so in this case, it's going to take 1 second plus 3 seconds plus 5 seconds. Oh, and also it does it in the same order. So like it grabs the three, creates a sleep sort thread, then runs, and so it'll add the three to the result at that point, right?
Mm.
So if you call the run method, you're not starting a new thread.
And that start method is from the thread class?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then this holds the sleep amount, and then this is for the result. Here in the constructor, you're passing in each element from the array list up here and the result.
Yep.
Here, when we pass in result, isn't a result empty
Yeah, it's empty initially.
initially, and then we uh, and then how does it add it to the result list?
What do you mean?
Because if it's initially empty, and then we pass it in here to the constructor. How does it know what to store into the result?
In line 50 is when we add something to the result.
Oh, okay, there it is. So we added the sleep amount, okay. And then here's the run function. And then the try and catch, that's, why do we do the try and catch?
Because thread.sleep throws an exception.
Uh-huh.
Specifically, it throws an interrupted exception. So we need to catch it just because Java likes catching things.
And if you don't catch it, you'll get an error.
You'll get a compilation error, yeah.
Sure, that's sleep. And then here you add it, and then you print out the result. Okay. Okay, it makes sense. And this will be considered a sorting algorithm?
Yeah. This would be a very, very bad sorting algorithm. So yeah, that's all the code we wrote, and now we can sort any list we want in a very inefficient way.
And are there any alternate ways to, like, different data structures you can use to make this better? Or
Not really. Like the implementation is pretty straightforward. Like you said, Java has a lot of different ways of starting up threads. This is one
Hmm.
of them. You could play with the others and see if it makes the code easier to follow.
And
But overall, this is all you need.
as far as runtime complexity,
Hmm.
uh, would this be a O red?
So it's interesting, right? Because it doesn't really have to do with how many elements there are. It has to do with what the largest number is, which is not the usual thing in an algorithm, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, so underneath it all, the reason why this works is because um, when you call thread.sleep, the way that thread.sleep is implemented is usually with a priority queue somewhere deep down in the operating system level or maybe the JVM level.
Hmm.
And so that priority queue itself is whenever you put a thread to sleep, it's sorting that thread into a priority queue that determines when it's going to wake up. And so that in itself has its own complexity, which is hidden away here because uh, the operating system just does it for us. So if we ignore that part, then it's going to be sort of O of whatever the largest number is um, in terms of what's going to really make the algorithm take longer. Uh, if we're just counting the number of iterations, then yeah, it's O of n because we just go through the numbers, go through every number, and then just create a thread and then wait for that to finish. So that's O of n.
Hmm. Got it. Interesting. Yeah, I think the whole writing concept really threw me off.
Yeah, and so when I ask people this question, it's sometimes people aren't familiar with threads, or at least they're not that familiar with the Java APIs. So that's why I totally expect people to be able to look up documentation, and uh, in which case, then I'm sort of looking to see how quickly they can read an example code or read through a doc and apply it and actually come to a solution.
Hmm.
Um, being familiar with the concept of threads, or at least how to run code concurrently, though, uh, is does help a lot with this particular problem.
What are um what are approaches or what are the best approaches of this type of problem?
Sorry, could you say that again? The best approach is that what?
For this type of problem where you have to I guess figure something out. What do you like? What would you do for like a problem like this where you need to figure it out how something works?
Yeah, so there are several layers. So let's say that I don't understand a particular programming concept. So let's say that I haven't, um, I've never heard of what a thread is before, right? Or I've never heard of what a Unix socket is, or anything what have you. In that case, I think it's up to the interviewer or to sort of guide you and explain what the concept is. And so as I was walking through how threads work, if you didn't understand something that I explained, I would encourage you to always speak up and be like, oh, can you actually go deeper into that?
Hmm.
Because an interview should never be about what it's not entirely about what predefined knowledge you have, but more of just how you work through a problem. Uh, After that, if I already knew how threads work, I just didn't know how they worked in Java, for example, then there are two approaches. Either you can read through the documentation and get a really good understanding of how it works, but I feel that that can take a little bit longer. The other option is just looking for some example code in Stack Overflow or where have you, and then trying to make that code run here in CoderPad, assuming that you're not doing some whiteboarding exercise, right?
Hmm.
So taking an example, getting it to run, like actually run inside of CoderPad, and then starting to modify that code to make it work with whatever problem I'm trying to solve.
Hmm. So basically, getting some code that you found online and trying to like figure out how that runs and then try to modify that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I would have Googled for Java thread example, copied that code, get it in here, understand how the threads are working, and then modify it to whatever specific aspects this problem has.
Yeah. Mm.
I
Yeah,
will say
exactly.
though, I feel like a lot of this took a while just because um, you were unfamiliar with threads, uh, and I think you could also get a little bit more familiar with Java as a whole. You mentioned that you do more C++ and just picked up Java recently.
Hmm.
But throughout it all, I think that you were really good about communicating where your thought process was, and where you were getting stuck or not, which is, I think, worth more than people realize.
Yeah, I think I was trying to read through the docs too much and I spent too much time there, but I think that approach of like taking an example and then modifying it, I think that would probably worked out better.
Yeah, in general, if you're trying to run your code more often than not, that tends to guide you towards the solution that you want.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And
But yeah, anything else I can answer for you?
um, you said you mentioned you work at Square. You said you work more with backend, right?
Yes.
What type of technologies do you usually work with now?
So on the back end, at Square, we use either Java, Ruby, or Go. And we limit it to those three languages because it makes overhead easier. Like if you have to switch between projects, you don't have to learn Clojure or some other more esoteric language.
Hmm.
And that's language wise. In terms of framework for Ruby, we have Ruby on Rails. But for Go and Java, we have our own in-house built sort of frameworks.
And those are like private frameworks for Square or open source.
They're private, so we call it service container. It brings in a lot of different things. So, for example, for talking to the database, it'll use Hibernate or Juke. So those are open frameworks, but then the way that we get them all to work together is proprietary. Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. No, that problem, I thought it was a really great example because I've net like all the questions I've kind of like done are more like I guess more straightforward like implementations of data structures. But I like this problem because it kind of like made me have to like try to figure out how trying to put something together and look through docs and examples of code. So I thought this was a really good problem.
Yeah, I'm glad you you found it enlightening.
Yeah,
That's sort of what I go for with it.
yeah,
But yeah, it's great to hear that you're doing practice interviews. That's definitely the way to go with this. The more practice interviews you do, the better you'll get.
yeah. Um, well, I really appreciate your time and taking your time out of your day and helping me. I really enjoy this, and I feel like this interview really helped me for future interviews.
Yeah, totally. Keep doing what you're doing. I think this is the right approach.
Okay. Um, well, thank you again, and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
You too. Take care. Bye.